What would an example of like shadow-based discovery be, or a use of shadowing in a sales cycle be like?
There's two, I would say, basic elements or most common elements of the shadowing that you're going to do. The first is shadowing the painful manual business process that you are likely replacing. That painful manual business process, for me, I sell a quality assurance tool. So I want to see that process from start to finish of how they select a case, grade a case, report on it. Basically, there are people who end to end own this process of quality within the organization. I know because I'm well researched on the current state that they're using some combination of Excel, Salesforce, all these different tools, they're swivel chairing. And what I want to do is see that process so I can essentially drag them through the glass and see where the blood is really being drawn in that process. I like to say that a shadow says a million words. So as you're going through that shadow process, you're going to see a bunch of places in that workflow where there's inefficiency. There's going to be places where your tool differentiates especially that you see within that workflow. And that's really what you want to drive from that business shadow. Now, how this might manifest itself, for instance, in like a discovery conversation, someone's going to say, you know, we have this really manual process today. I don't know if it's really possible to replace. We have this really complex reporting. Do you guys think that's something that you can augment or that you can replace? And your instinct might be to say, hey, like we are the best at reporting, like we will crush that. A better response might be, look, we're pretty confident, like those are the kind of problems that we solve for, but before making any promises, we'd like to much better understand that current state of that reporting and that workflow. Can we build a shadow of your current manual reporting process into our evaluation criteria? That way we are able to speak specifically to that reporting and also tell you what we can't do, and we will be transparent about that.
Let's actually walk through a shadowing meeting. How do you actually run that meeting without just like sitting over their shoulder and asking them to click on a million different things?
If you've prefaced this shadow correctly and you're building champions and driving excitement, they're actually going to be excited to shadow for you because they have this sense that Max knows how to build a business case. Max is going to save me from this manual process I'm in. And if I can show him really where this is painful, he's going to be a great partner on this business case to bring this up. So I think the way that we bring this ethos of shadowing, you know, in sales, you always want to give a reason, a why. So as you're going into the shadow process, you're constantly saying like, oh, the shadow is going to be great for that because we're going to be able to articulate how much time this takes you in the current state. I'm going to take some screenshots. And when we go up to your boss, we're going to be able to really articulate the painful aspect of XYZ thing that we're replacing. So I think for one, like really at the end of the day, you are watching them click through their workflow. You're kind of watching the pain of what they do every day. But if you're selling how it aligns to the business case, you're selling how it's de-risking implementation, they're really going to be encouraged to do that. And they're going to understand where it's going. So I think another big aspect of this, like champion building is such a massive aspect of the shadowing piece because by the time we're going into these shadows, if they're willing to do it, if they're kind of gung-ho about it, it means we're forming champions who trust that we're going to solve a problem and they see this shadow as a means of solving that problem. Leading into it, like you want to be very clear about what information you want to extract from that. So like, hey, you know, Nick, I want to shadow your QA workflow. What that usually looks like is the selection process, the filtering process, the assignment process, the grading process, then how that filters into reporting, and then how you go from that reporting and then you go communicate to your executives. So usually it's about 5 to 6 things that we want to shadow. Let me know if you have any questions, but guessing that's something that's kind of central to you. So you're really defining what that shadow process looks like. By the time they hop on, they should be very aware about what aspects of the workflow they're shadowing. You should be very innately aware of where your specific differentiators apply to each part of that process. If I'm shadowing this selection process, what are the 2 to 3 things that my technology does in that selection process that are really going to differentiate it? And then I'm looking for that and I'm calling it out. Can you show me that field again? Oh, that field's going to be really important. If your competitor's not talking about extracting that field, let's make sure to button that away for later and make sure we talk about those really tactical things. Is that you're going to gain this intimate understanding of what the current state looks like. You can shadow your competitors a lot. I know what all my competitors look like because I asked to shadow them. And then when someone goes, how do you know that about my competitor? Oh, well, I shadowed him 4 times last month and replaced him for 3. So this is all coming from a place of deep research. That's also a benefit of that shadow process.
You know, Max, I wasn't as intentional about you as doing this when I sold ERP software to law firms, but I remember like there were a couple times we ended up, I guess, stumbling into doing a shadow, and it totally changed the dynamic of the deal. I remember we had this one law firm, it's a really large law firm in San Francisco, and the managing partner of the firm, he was like, we have a super complex calculation methodology to determine how much we pay the partners of our law firm. And he goes, it literally takes our CFO an entire quarter to do those calculations. One thing that you called out in the way that you were selling the shadow that I think is really important for folks to note, you were like, we're going to let you know where we can help, but we're also going to call out like where we can't so that we'll let you know where there are gaps in the process. And I think that's really important because a lot of folks, when they're thinking about making a change, are really, really scared of certain places being a step back. And when you use that as a reason to say, hey, we're going to tell you where we're great and where we actually can't help, it actually reduces a lot of their anxiety. Let's say I'm listening to this and I'm like, hell yeah, this is something that I want to integrate into my sales process. First question for you is, what are some of the other areas where there are opportunities for a shadow?
If there isn't a set of manual, painful processes or like some current state to observe, it means they're probably not trying to solve the problem. So also like something to shadow is a sign that they have tried, that there's intent to solve that problem. And in the intent of how they're trying to solve that is so much data about what they're actually trying to do. So that's one thing, is there's going to be a lot of business workflows. Now, underpinning that, there's some set of systems. So many tools today are built on Snowflake or Salesforce. And you might be watching some sort of like report, you're watching some Tableau dashboard, but that's like sitting on top of Snowflake, and someone owns that Snowflake who is like sitting in front of those tables and is like, screw you, sales guy. I'm not going to give you the time of day to give you those tables. So you're going to like get the business all fired up. You're going to do all this business discovery. Then you're going to get to that, VP of data and integrations who owns Snowflake and be like, oh, all these things you talk about the business, we're not sharing those tables anyway. So like, it's all a moot point. So as you're talking to the business, this is what you want to share with them is like, look, share your experience, kind of a pointed observation, open-ended question. A lot of the time I do all this great business discovery with my business stakeholders. And then we get to the Snowflake owner after 3 months of hard work and he takes it all over it. What I would like to do is work with you to unlock a shadow with that technical stakeholder so we can actually align on your use case with the person who's going to be making that integration. So long-winded way of saying, you want to do those business shadows, but then those are going to unlock the systems underpinning that, because there's huge gatekeepers underneath those processes that are going to kill you in the last mile of the deal. And you want to use these technical shadows to get in front of them, and not just yourself. Like, bring the superstars on your team. I'm bringing my CTO, MIT grad, engineer extraordinaire to go nerd out with them. Like, you're not just multi-threading with their organization, you're also multi-threading with their organization. So when I'm doing that Snowflake shadow, technically, that I earned through my business stakeholder, I'm going to say, I'm going to bring my CTO in. Dude's a whiz. He can go toe-to-toe with you about Snowflake. They're going to leave that call grudgingly, like, well, those guys did know what they were talking about, and that is kind of compelling that they would pull that in.